1971 reality check. We have to. Because look, we all love a great sports story, a great sports myth, right? And we've all heard, well, most of us that are big sports enthusiasts like myself, we've heard this bedtime story. Bear Bryant schedules USC in 1970, just so Sam Bam Cunningham, who is the older brother of Randall Cunningham, could run roughshod all over Alabama, embarrassing the fuck out of them so bad that this entirely huge racist ass state with the Grand Dragon colors on their uniforms had no choice but to finally let black players on the field. Nice story, right? It makes the Bear look like a visionary who used a loss to force progress. Dot no make it. We gotta be real. It wasn't about some sudden moral awakening. Let's not make Bear Bryant this moral character. He wasn't. It was pure, cold, unadulterated survival. Because in 71, Alabama was still a segregated fortress. They were backed by racist Governor George Wallace. Let's not forget who he was. This is the same cracker that stood in front of a schoolhouse door, trying not to let black kids in. See, they weren't holding out business because they didn't know black players were good. They were holding out because of the politics of hate. So funny because they know they can't compete with us in many levels, so they have to try to bully us out of it. By the time they played that rematch in 71, Alabama wasn't integrating for the sake of justice. They integrated because they were tired of losing. At the time, Bear Bryant was not the coach that he was earlier in his career. They realized that you can't build a dynasty on whites-only talent pool when the rest of the world is playing with a full deck. Trumping with spades, if you will. So here we are, 60 years later, living in a time where voting rights are being chipped away in those same states. Now, FBA out in Georgia organized, they repealed that. Okay? Blacks, Latinos, if you organize and stand in petition in those institutions of governing, they will change their mind. Check it out. Those same institutions practically dependent on black bodies to fill their stadiums and coffers. So I have to ask, where's the pride? Don't get it wrong. Hey man, I grew up loving me some Tar Heels and Florida State football and all that shit, but now you gotta open your fucking eyes. Because you gotta ask, where's the collective backbone? How do we have the audacity, the unmitigated gall, to stand on the sidelines and cheer for schools that less than a human lifetime ago wouldn't even let us in the building? They wouldn't let us in the building. And we act like we're a part of the family when we're actually just a labor force for that system that is still debating our human rights. Grand Dragon colors of the Ku Klux Klan is what the University of Alabama and other schools do wear in the Southeastern Conference and other places. And I thought about it. Let's do the math of migration. Because if we forget the history lesson, talk about the math. Because people say, yo, Ak, they need the exposure in these schools to get to the league. They need the SEC infrastructure. What if we flip the script? What if we stop the new plantation model, which is basically channeling all black athletic genius into their schools? What if we flip that around and transferred all athletic genius into HBCUs? Because if every top tier black recruit turned their back on the SEC, Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, the whole lot, it wouldn't take long before these programs wouldn't just lose games. They would actually face an economic extinction event. Because you know that we're talking about a billion-dollar media ecosystem. Not empire. Media ecosystem. The SEC's TV contracts, the massive Nike deals, Adidas, the luxury suite money, the donor prestige. See, all this hinges on the product on the field. If that product, the black athlete, goes to Howard, Morehouse, Jackson State or Southern, I guarantee you that revenue follows the talent. Within a couple of years, you would see an immediate infusion of capital into black institutions that have been systemically underfunded for over a century, especially after the 60s when they started to go to HBCUs and pull our best players out. When they now wanted to go into the inner city and pull our best players out, the HBCUs went down. Because don't forget, there's like, over 50 HBCU members in the NFL Hall of Fame. Correct me if I'm wrong. Please do in the comments. Make sure you like, subscribe. The TV networks would have to shift their contracts to follow the eyeballs. The corporate sponsors, the ones chasing the youth culture, the hottest stars, they'd be forced to pivot. We'd be talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure, stadium upgrades, academic funding being funneled directly back into our communities. Please understand, this would not be an overnight fix. But within a 10-year cycle, damn right, you'd be looking at a total shift in the landscape of collegiate power. The question isn't whether black athletes can build an empire. They've already done it for everybody else. The question is, why are we still building it for people who don't prioritize our humanity?
In my opinion, the young generation of whites, blacks, browns, whatever else there is, you're living at a time of extremism, a time of revolution, a time when there's got to be a change. People in power have misused it, and now there has to be a change, and a better world has to be built, and the only way it's going to be built with extreme methods. And I, for one, will join in with anyone. Don't care what color you are, as long as you want to change this miserable condition that exists on this earth. Thank you.
Welcome back. Thank you for sticking around, guys. Now we're going to break down just the sheer capital that moves through these institutions, and it's mind-blowing. And what you may see or hear, you really can't conceive exactly what that money is about. I really understand that a lot of you guys out there are very money-savvy people, but the numbers I'm about to throw at you are fucking insane. So the SEC revenue machine, now we're just going to look at the 24 to 25 fiscal year. We're not going to go any deeper than that. The Southeastern Conference isn't just a sports league. You have to understand that it's literally an economic juggernaut. When I understand, it actually competes with some of the lower tier NFL franchises. And for the 2024-2025 fiscal year, that conference distributed over $1.03 billion to its members. Now we have to look at that financial impact categorically, because that estimated average SEC revenue distribution was, I think, $72.4 million per share of each school. So you look at the media rights. You have TV contracts adding up to about $710 million on general average for the conference alone. That's just that conference. Then you look at the SEC championship game. That's $80 million annual revenue. One game. Operating revenue per school, $133.6 million. $133.6 million motherfucking dollars. Now we got to look at the product analysis in the SEC. So the product that generates these billions is the athlete, right? In football and men's basketball, the two primary revenue drivers, the reliance on black talent is immense, to the fact that it's actually profound. They would not be able to survive without it. So if we took a look at the $133.6 million in average operating revenue per school, a massive portion of that is fueled by TV contracts. ESPN, ABC, CBS, you get it. Now that pays for the quality of the game. The speed, the highlight reels, the catches, and the power. Now imagine if the top 1 to 200 elite black recruits annually decided to opt out of these SEC schools in favor of an HBCU, that product wouldn't just decline, it would undergo a massive correction. It would actually probably suffer as much as the Great Depression did. The shift. HBCU potential versus SEC reality. If all these players move to HBCUs, we aren't just talking about a transfer of players. We're talking about a transfer of market share. The media rights pivot would be incredible because currently the SEC holds the power because they own the primetime slots. 3:30, 8:30 games, those are pretty much just primetime games right there, right? Now, if HBCUs possess the top talent, the eyeballs have no choice but to follow. The advertisers are going to go where the culture is, and the culture follows the talent. Deion proved it. A bidding war would start for HBCUs. That would effectively start siphoning off billions of dollars of the traditional powerhouses and, say, give it a 10-year period. They would crumble. Absolutely fucking crumble. And they'd probably pull some 1921 shit and try to destroy all of our schools because they're pissed off then. No more slaves to make you money. People would say, these HBCUs can't pay these players. Well, let's look at the NIL collective drain. Right now, NIL collectives are pumping millions of dollars into SEC programs to secure talent. Now, if those collectives lost their primary investment vehicle to the top black recruits, well, the value of the SEC roster would plummet. See, that money would be looking for a new home, and it would be forced to go where the talent is. Then the infrastructure gap. Currently, Southeastern Conference schools average $200 million in operating expenses. Now, if HBCUs could capture even 20% of that media-driven wealth currently flowing to the SEC, we're talking about an injection of hundreds of millions of dollars annually into black institutions. Now, this would fund not just these athletic programs, but it will also fund laboratories, faculty salaries, endowed chairs, and business incubators, not just locker rooms. Then you look at the bottom line. When you ask about the damage, you have to understand this. The SEC is an economic system built on a specific labor demographic. If the labor stops showing up, the system defaults. Same thing that we need to do about this corporate government that we have, because this is not a country, it's a corporation. If we stop paying taxes, we stop showing up to our jobs, they will freak the fuck out and give us what we want. We have to just be strong enough to do so. America, that's another show. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment, because it will be coming. I'm going to give you the proper mathematical equation that you need in order to wake up. The math is simple. Markets move toward talent, just as the market moves toward what sells. If the talent decides that the house that wouldn't let them in there 60 years ago is no longer where they belong or want to be, that $1.03 billion revenue distribution becomes a ghost of a legacy. Because you have to understand that this is not about playing for free. It's about owning the equity that you created. You aren't just changing a roster, you're fortuning an empire. You're forcing, once you change, the entire financial structure of college sports to rebuild in your image. Organizing is something that's hard for us to do. So I'm going to leave you with this. Make sure you take heed to what it is that you're seeing on social media. Some of it is going to be race baiting, some of it's going to be hate baiting and all that. Stick to facts. Don't let your emotions get involved in it, because this is nothing but factual evidence. Okay? Because we should have strength in numbers, but we're divided by the digits. Hand on the trigger while the community fidgets. We're screaming for the freedom, but we're trapped inside the cipher, walking through the flames just to see who burns brighter. We bleed the same blood, but we war for the block. Same old story, different black fingers squeezing the Glock. Strength in numbers. Y'all wake up from the slumber before the lightning strikes and we buried by the thunder. The Willie Bobo Show unlocks the light. Make sure you tune in for the next episode. Peace.